What is good practicing? I would define good practicing as active, intelligent problem solving at the piano with the purpose of preparing my future self to be ready to play. Now, this idea of future self is very important. We want to think always about our future selves being ready to play, as opposed to right now what is amusing for me is to do this, or what is interesting to me is to do that. However, that's not my priority. My priority is not what my current self wants, but my future self who's going to be out there playing. How do I take care of that guy and make sure he's ready to play? So, as opposed to good practicing, what is bad practicing? Mostly bad practicing, aside from just wasting time and, not doing anything, sitting on the bench and smoking cigarettes, mostly bad practicing is just trying to play without any particular attempt to identify and solve problems. So if I wanted to leave this room and there's a very heavy door that's supposed to reduce the sound, and if I just run into the door, smack my face into it, and I go, ow, that didn't work, and then I just back up and I walk up and run into the door again and run into the door again, and I never ask, why am I hurting myself against this door? Why do I not change my approach and see if I can get better results? So I would describe bad practicing as some kind of activity at the piano that lacks any kind of reflection on whether it's achieving anything. It's just playing through, it's making a lot of noise, do it again, and never asks, is this working? So why do we sometimes practice badly, even though we may kind of know that we're doing it and try to get away from it, and yet we often find ourselves not practicing very effectively? Well, for one reason, just going to the piano and noodling around can be fun and relaxing, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a wonderful activity. But we can sometimes mistake the relaxing fun and the goofing off for actual practice. And we should distinguish between these two activities because they have different purposes. Just because I'm seated at the piano and playing something doesn't mean I'm accomplishing very much. And in fact, as a kid, I was a really rotten piano student, and I was supposed to practice for a half hour a day, and I actually was very skilled at running out the clock. I'd go down to the piano in the basement and make just the sort of appropriate sounding noises that sounds like a kid trying to play the piano, but really I was just trying to make the half hour disappear so I could go watch cartoons. So the temptation just to play around and not do anything serious is always present because the piano is, for many people, very enjoyable. Or for certain kids like me, horrible, and we don't want to be there at all. Secondly, and perhaps most challenging, is the fact that exciting, dramatic, interesting pieces often tempt us to go straight for the triumphant performance and skip all of the boring preliminary work. It's way more fun to imagine crossing the finish line to a cheering crowd than it is to do sit-ups or any kind of exercises. And it's way more fun to just kind of pretend I'm on the stage of an important hall, Carnegie Hall, with a standing room only crowd, and I'm crashing my way through something dramatic and the crowd goes wild. Well, that's very tempting to do, and I know I would do that all the time as a young person in the practice room when I got past running out the clock and got a little older. And I talk to students who find that they're drawn into this a lot, this kind of pretending that this is a great performance. And in doing so, we tend to skim over all the problems that need to be solved, all the difficult technical things, and just kind of muscle through to the end. So we try to force the music to happen even when it's not ready. Another reason is that a certain amount of mental and physical absorption actually does take place during bad practicing. Even with just thoughtless repetition. I see this many times. There are students who sometimes they can get through from beginning to end very difficult pieces, advanced sonata movements and romantic pieces that are quite significant. It's not great playing. It's very messy. But it can look and feel like progress to those who may not know any better. and it may look and feel like progress to the student. So it is possible to absorb some things and kind of be able halfway to play something through thoughtless practice. The human mind still absorbs things even if you're not working carefully. It still will learn things. And that can deceive us into thinking that we've done the work and that we're ready and that everything is proceeding really well. Finally, very often, teachers actually don't provide instruction on how to practice. Maybe the lesson is full of good stuff. It says, play forte on page 26, play piano on page 27, bring out the melody, count, listen to these rests. All of that is good stuff, and it's true, but may not actually say, when you get home, take 10 minutes and do this, take 15 minutes and do that, take 20 minutes and do this other thing. It may not give clear guidance on what to do on our own time. So, what will a good practice strategy include? First of all, music that is of reasonable difficulty for the player. We progress by degrees in almost everything we do. How fast you can run, and how big a book you can read, and math problems that you can do, and everything else we do, we get better a little bit at a time by doing things at progressively slightly more difficult levels, but not exponentially more difficult levels. So it is very important that the music be of a reasonable difficulty level. And I often find with students who are college bound that they want to skip a lot of levels. They want to go right from intermediate pre-college literature to big concert literature, and there's a lot of in between. And I mentioned this in a previous video where teachers are prone to give them music that is above their level. It's sometimes that high school senior year and you just want to finish with something great, and it's very tempting for everybody to go for those pieces that are not at the appropriate level. So you're not going to go from intermediate pre-college literature to Rachmaninoff with nothing in between, and no practice strategy will overcome that gap of trying to play something that is way beyond the player's level. Nothing you do will help. If I somehow get into the Olympics on the gymnastics team, no month of preparation, no matter what I do, is going to get me ready to run with those guys. It's simply not going to happen. Next, in your practice strategy, you need a clear idea of how you want the music to go. The best advice I ever heard is play what you want to hear. You can't play what you want to hear if you don't know what you want to hear. So you need a clear understanding of the music. What does the rhythmic feel? Can you sing the melodic lines? Don't practice music without a detailed plan for the results that you want. And especially, don't just plunk out the notes and trust that the sense and the logic of it will slowly reveal it to yourself as you learn the notes. I would make sure to know well in advance, before I play one note, exactly how I want this thing to sound. Next, it is crucial to identify problems with specificity. For example, in measure 13, there is a 16-note passage, and I think I don't have a good fingering or grouping for that. I don't know how to move through to play that. That's a very specific description of a problem. Or in measure 47, there is a harmonic passage, and I don't understand how it works, like what those chords really are, and so every time I get there, I get confused. That's a very specific description of the problem. And a description that's very specific also will contain within it the beginnings of a solution. If you describe the problem carefully enough, it will almost tell you, okay, here's how you should be working on that. All right, so identifying problems with specificity, problems of fingering, grouping, redistribution, etc. And finally, calm, thoughtful rehearsals at an easy tempo. Okay, it can't be a difficult tempo. You can't be struggling. All the problems have to be solved, and it has to be no bumps in the road. when you play through that. And that's a rehearsal. That's where you're helping your future self be ready to play it. So calm, thoughtful rehearsals at a very easy, manageable speed, followed by evaluation and critique for what you're going to do in your next practice session. And one little practical thing that I really recommend is when you do one of these calm, thoughtful rehearsals and you run through, you make mental notes about every problem that came up. Moments of uncertainty, missed notes, passages that are awkward, things that just feel difficult. And immediately after finishing, write down ideas for what you want to practice the next time you sit down at the piano. So yes, you need a practice strategy in order to make progress.